Welcome to the channel. Whisper in your head. Creepy and no-sleep stories await you. Enjoy the show.
I should have known something was wrong when Mark stopped singing along. We've been going to Pine Hollow Campground for 3 summers straight. Me, Mark, Emily, and Chris. It wasn't anything fancy, just a stretch of state forest up north where you could pitch a tent for $20 a night. No cell service, no bathroom facilities, just you in the woods for miles in every direction. We loved it. This was supposed to be our last trip before college scattered us across the country. Emily had gotten into a university in California. Chris was heading to trade school, and Mark and I were staying local, but we knew things would never be quite the same. So we planned this final weekend, packed our usual supplies, and drove 4 hours to our favorite spot beside Mirror Lake. The first night went perfectly. We set up camp in our usual clearing about 50 yards back from the water. Emily had brought her guitar like always, and after we got a good fire going, she started playing the songs we'd been singing together for years. Country Roads, Sweet Caroline, all the classics that sound better when you're slightly off-key and surrounded by friends. That's when I first heard it, just as Emily finished the chorus of Country Roads. I swear I heard someone else singing the last line from somewhere in the trees behind us. The voice was faint, maybe carried on the wind, but it was definitely there. I looked around at the others, but they were already launching into the next verse, laughing at Chris's attempt at harmonizing. Did you guys hear that? I asked during a break between songs. Hear what? Emily adjusted her grip on the guitar neck. Someone's singing. From the woods. Mark laughed. Probably just an echo off the lake, man. Sound does weird things out here. I nodded, but I wasn't convinced. The voice had sounded too clear, too deliberate to be an echo. Still, I didn't want to kill the mood, so I let it go. The second night, it happened again. We were sitting around the fire, and Emily had just finished playing Puff the Magic Dragon, a song that always made us feel like kids again, even though we were all 18. As the last chord faded, I heard it again, a voice from the darkness, singing the final line word for word. This time, Mark heard it too. He sat up straighter, his head tilted toward the trees. "What was that?" he asked. "I told you yesterday," I said. "There's someone out there. It's probably just another campsite," Emily said, though she sounded less certain than the night before. Sound carries weird in the forest. We sat in silence for a moment, listening. The usual night sound surrounded us. Crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, wind rustling through the leaves. But no voices, no other campers. Chris grabbed a flashlight and swept it across the tree line. The beam illuminated nothing but trunks and undergrowth, shadows dancing as the light moved. "Maybe we should check the camp registry when we head out," Mark suggested. "See if there are other people nearby." But I'd already seen the registry when we signed in. We were the only ones registered for this section of the forest. The third night changed everything. Emily had just started playing House of the Rising Sun, a newer addition to our campfire repertoire that she'd been practicing all summer. She was only halfway through the first verse when the voice joined in. This time, it wasn't singing the words we'd already finished. It was harmonizing with Emily in real time, note for note, word for word. The voice came from multiple directions now, as if whatever was out there had moved around our camp while singing. Emily's fingers froze on the strings. The guitar fell silent, but the voice in the woods continued singing for another few seconds before it, too, stopped. The silence that followed felt suffocating. "That's not an echo," Chris whispered. Mark stood up so fast he knocked over his camp chair. "We need to leave. Right now." "Don't be ridiculous," Emily said, but her voice was shaking. "It's probably just..." "Just what?" Mark's voice cracked. "Just some psycho who's been watching us for 3 days? Learning our songs." I wanted to argue, but the fear in Mark's voice matched what I was feeling. This wasn't some innocent camper at a distant site. This was something else, something that had been observing us, studying us. "Let's just pack up in the morning," I said, trying to be the voice of reason. "We'll leave first thing." But as I said it, the voice started up again. This time it wasn't singing, it was talking, repeating our conversation back to us in a voice that sounded almost like mine, but not quite right. "Let's just pack up in the morning. We'll leave first thing." Then it repeated Emily's words. "It's probably just." Then Chris's. "That's not an echo." Each phrase came from a different spot in the darkness, as if multiple people were positioned around our camp. throwing our own words back at us. Mark grabbed the biggest flashlight we had and started walking toward the trees. "Show yourself," he shouted. "What do you want?" I caught his arm. "Don't. Just don't." But it was too late. The voice responded, using Mark's own words, "Show yourself. What do you want?" But this time, it wasn't coming from the woods. It was coming from behind us, from the direction of our tents. We spun around, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. Nothing. But as we stood there, breathing hard and trying to make sense of what was happening, we heard it again. Singing. It was Country Roads, the first song Emily had played 3 nights ago. But now there were 4 voices singing it, each one slightly different, each one an imperfect copy of one of ours. My voice, Mark's voice, Emily's voice, Chris's voice, all singing together from somewhere in the darkness beyond our fire's reach. The harmony was beautiful and terrifying. We didn't sleep that night. We sat back to back around the dying fire, flashlights in hand, listening to our own voices singing our favorite songs back to us from the woods. Sometimes the singing would stop, and we'd hear our conversations from earlier in the weekend being replayed, discussions about college, inside jokes, even private moments when we thought no one else was listening. When dawn finally came, we packed our gear in record time. Nobody talked about what had happened. We just wanted to get out of there. It wasn't until we were loading the car that I realized Mark hadn't said a word all morning. He'd helped pack, nodded when we asked him questions, but he hadn't actually spoken since the night before. "You okay, man?" I asked as we secured the tent to the roof rack. He looked at me, opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. He tried a second time, and when words finally came out, they weren't in his voice. They were in mine. "You okay, man?" He said, using my exact intonation, my exact tone. That was 6 months ago. We never talked about what happened at Pine Hollow, not once. Emily and Chris went off to their schools, and Mark and I started at the local community college. Everything seemed normal, except Mark never speaks in his own voice anymore. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. But over time, I realized that every word Mark says is something one of us said during those 3 days in the woods. He speaks using our voices, our inflections, our words, like he's some kind of recording device playing back conversations from that weekend. The others don't seem to notice. When Mark talks, they respond normally, as if nothing's wrong. But I hear it. I hear Emily's voice coming out of his mouth when he orders coffee. I hear Chris's laugh when Mark thinks something's funny. I hear my own voice when he's trying to be serious. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm trying to fall asleep, I swear I can hear singing outside my window. 4 voices harmonizing songs we used to sing around the campfire, getting more perfect each time. I think something came back with us from those woods. Something that's still learning, still copying, still watching. And I'm starting to wonder if Mark is the only one it took. Have you ever noticed yourself saying things you don't remember deciding to say? My therapist keeps telling me I need to go outside more to reconnect with the things I used to enjoy. As a kid, I practically lived in the woods climbing trees, making forts, running trails until the sun went down. But somewhere around high school, I lost that part of myself. These days I feel more disconnected than ever, trapped in my own head. She said nature could help, that walking among trees might quiet the noise inside me. So here I am, giving a try. I live with my roommate, Mike, and luckily our place sits right by a massive forest. There's a trail that winds deep into it, and I figured it might be a good place to start these so-called therapy nature walks. Day 1, I've officially started exploring the woods behind my house. My therapist has been pushing me to spend more time outdoors, to connect with nature, so I figured I'd start small with the forest that's practically in my backyard basically. I also decided to blog about it. Supposedly, if this gets popular enough, I might even make a little money. Who knows? Anyway, today was more about easing into things. I didn't go far, just wandered enough to look around. I stumbled across some mushrooms. I think they're called jack-o'-lantern mushrooms, but honestly, I'm not an expert. I also spotted a deer and a fawn. Pretty sure it's the same pair I've seen wandering around the front yard recently. Of course, it wasn't all peaceful. The bugs were everywhere. I'll be real with you. I can't stand them. Their twitchy little legs, the clusters of eyes, the way they crawl over everything. Gross. Just gross. So yeah, that was pretty much it for today. Nothing too exciting, but it's a start. I'll be back out here tomorrow. Day 2. Hello again. Right now, I'm on my way to a creek my older neighbor, Bob, told me about. Apparently, it's just up the hill, a small one, nothing dramatic. Supposedly, it's quiet, relaxing, and perfect for calming anxiety. Bob said he'd go there after he lost his daughter to clear his mind. Since that's the whole point of me being out here, I figure I'd check it out. I think I'm getting close. There are critters moving around near the waterline. Wait, there's even a deer in there? I didn't know deer could swim. Fun fact, I guess. Maybe this is turning into some kind of wildlife blog. Huh, okay, I see it now. There's a bush blocking the way, but I think I found a path through. All right, so I've made it to the creek. But that swimming deer I thought I saw, it wasn't swimming. It was just the head of a deer floating in the water. The creek isn't calm and sparkling like I imagined. The water is red. Blood. That's unsettling. Suddenly, I'm hoping there aren't any bears around. I do not need that kind of stress. There's a trail leading away from here, so I think I'll follow that instead. Funny thing is, I've heard rumors about this very trail. People stopped using it after a girl went missing nearby, aka Bob's daughter. Last seen heading this way during a stormy night. Kind of her own fault, right? Wandering out in weather like that. Still, the thought of it makes the hairs on my arms stand up. Anyway, back to the trail. It winds through the forest hills and goes deep into the woods. I doubt I'll go that far today, but maybe tomorrow. Assuming tomorrow comes, of course. The idea of running into a bear keeps creeping in my mind. I know I shouldn't dwell on it, but hey, it's always a possibility. So far, all I've found are more mushrooms and strange plants I can't identify. If anything interesting pops up, I'll let you know. Otherwise, I'll sign off for now. Same time tomorrow? Yeah, day 3. All right, day 3. This time I'm not alone. My roommate came along, and he brought his dog, Pickle. He's a St. Bernard Husky mix, full of energy, chasing after everything that moves. Honestly, that probably means no animal sightings today. I told my roommate about the deer head I found yesterday. His reaction was weirdly casual. He said he's never heard of a bear leaving just the head behind, so he figures it was probably hunters. Makes more sense than a picky bear, I guess. We made it farther along the trail than I did yesterday. Beyond where I turned back, it's just endless forest. Trees, grass, mud, the usual. Miles and miles of it. But it feels less heavy having someone to talk to. Not just my own thoughts rattling around in my head. Oh, and in case you're wondering how I'm writing while hiking, it's speech to text. That's why the tone sometimes comes off weird. I usually clean it up before posting. Sometimes it even record conversations, like this one between me and my roommate. Roommate, the girl who went missing, she actually lived a house down from us. Her family still does. Me, wait, really? I didn't know she was that close. Roommate, yeah, she was super social, always exploring these woods. Came back with stories about what she found: abandoned buildings, strange trees, animal corpses. You name it. Once she got started, she wouldn't stop. I think her disappearance is tied to her adventures. Probably found something she wasn't supposed to. Me, hold up, you mean there's stuff out here? More than just trees? Buildings? Cars? Man, I don't want to end up like her, but honestly, finding cool stuff could be fun. And distracting. Roommate, yeah, there's all kind of things. Old cars, caves, even buildings. Not common, but they're out here. She was the only one who really knew where though. So yeah, apparently this forest is hiding way more than I realized. Once I know the safer, familiar parts better, I might start exploring deeper. Not alone though, and definitely not in storms. I'm not repeating her mistakes. Still, I wish I could have talked to her. She probably saw things no one else ever has. But let's be real, she's most likely dead. No body was ever found, but no one looked very hard either. Anyway, today took a turn. We'd made it maybe a fifth of the way along the trail when a man suddenly came running toward us. At first, I thought he was just a jogger, but the closer he got, the stranger he seemed. He had a heavy southern accent, which was weird, since we don't even live in the South. And he kept muttering frantically, "You best get going. Back that way ain't no good. Ain't no good, not at all. Get going. You ain't welcome there. Me neither, okay." The words tumbled out like he was being chased. He wasn't dressed like a hiker either. Wore a work vest and jeans, moving fast, eyes darting everywhere. Maybe drugs? Maybe something else. Whatever it was, we weren't sticking around to find out. We turned back. I didn't ask him what he meant about not being welcome. And honestly, I don't think I want to know. Day 5, after yesterday's bizarre encounter, I decided to try a different part of the forest. This time, I brought Pickle with me again. He's huge part St. Bernard, part husky, and honestly, his size alone makes me feel safer. No one's messing with me while he's around. I chose a more local area today, one with joggers and hikers. There are even 3 small cabins scattered nearby. Feels more lived in, less remote. Still, I couldn't shake the memory of that man from yesterday. Who was he? Why was he running? The place was crowded, practically the whole town seemed to be out. Controlling Pickle in a crowd is no easy task. He tugged, lunged, tried to jump on kids. After wrestling with him for a while, I decided to move farther out. Not too deep into the woods, but away from the bustle. Every spot I tried before was packed. One even had children playing, and Pickle nearly joined them. Total chaos. So here I am again, back on the forest trail, despite swearing I wouldn't. I'm not planning to go deep, just far enough for some quiet. And honestly, the walk's been peaceful. I was starting to relax when, editing me here, the voice-to-text cut out at the worst moment. The last thing it picked up was me yelling, "Oh my God, I dropped the leash. Pickle, Pickle, come back." He tugged hard enough to rip it right out of my hands. Before I could react, he was gone. I shouted his name, but he didn't come back. Panic sank in. My roommate is going to kill me if I don't find him. Now I have no choice. I have to go after him. Should I call my roommate for help and get screamed at? Or do I try to find Pickle alone? It's already late. I think I have to call him. After the call. So here's what happened next. I call Mike. The second he met up with me, he let me have it. What the hell, dude? You just let him run off? How could you let this happen? This is ridiculous. Which way did he go? You're so weak you can't even hold down a dog. He's out here in this massive forest, and you just let him disappear? You thought taking him to the busiest part of the park, knowing damn well you can't control him, was a good idea? Do you realize how stupid that is? That's like my child out here, and he could get hurt. I stammered, "I'm so sorry, Mike. I didn't know he was that bad on a leash. I honestly thought I could handle him. I just wanted to bring him along, especially after what happened yesterday, you know?" Mike cut me off immediately. "Yeah, yesterday. Whatever freak that grown man out could be after my dog right now. Thanks to you. You put him in this situation." Something in me snapped. I yelled back, "Well, maybe your dog should be trained better." I chased after him, called his name, and he didn't even look back. That's not just on me. I didn't do this on purpose. He froze, then sighed. "Fine, you didn't do it on purpose. But damn, man, you still let him run out here. I am scared. I don't know what's in these woods." His voice softened. I told him, "Pickle's a big dog. He'll probably be fine until we find him." That ended the argument. We walked the trail for hours, calling for Pickle. No response. We even contacted the local wildlife patrol, but they shrugged us off. Said they couldn't go past the 4th section of the trail. Totally useless. By now, it was completely dark. 8:43 p.m. recording. Okay, it's 8:43 p.m. and still no sign of Pickle. For the record, Pickle's a dumb name, but this is serious. He could be dead, for all I know. I split off from Mike because he was sick of me narrating. But you never know what might happen better to document. Oh my God, I just heard yelping. It sounds like Pickle. I think it's him. Pickle, I'm running now. The sound's getting louder. He's nearby. Wait, it's coming from inside a building. My flashlight's crap, but I can see enough to tell it's big. Covered in plants. No graffiti, though. Strange. It looks abandoned. Pickle's cries are echoing from inside. But then what the hell? A voice. A deep, female voice, distant but clear. No, quiet. Please tell me this thing recorded that. I froze. My whole body wanted to run. I love dogs, but Pickle isn't worth dying for. Not over this. I'm not telling Mike what I just heard. He'd risk his life for that dog. Not me. I'll tell him in the morning. Hopefully by then, I'll figure out how to explain this without sounding insane. I'm leaving now. If I head downhill, I'll eventually hit the trail. Next morning, early morning update. I told Mike I might have heard Pickle crying farther up the trail. I also mentioned the building, not the voice. Mike lit up immediately. Okay, great. You're showing me where you heard it. So now I'm limping along beside him. My legs ache from all the running yesterday, but I don't have a choice. We've made it about 2 sections into the trail. For context, I think there are 5 total. I told him the cries were closer to the 3rd section. He asked what else I saw, and I caved. I mentioned the voice. What do you mean, voice? He demanded. I tried to play it down. When I heard the cries, I also thought I heard someone. A faint voice outside the building. Not sure, it was dark. Mike exploded. And you just now telling me this? What if someone took him? I stuttered. Well, maybe it's good there's a voice. Maybe it's just a squatter keeping him safe. Mike buried his face in his hands, shaking like he was about to break down. Then he started screaming Pickle's name and ran off. Now I'm alone. Later that morning. Mike, no answer. He can't have gotten that far ahead. He's not a runner. I've been jogging, and I still can't find him. Wait, the building. It's here. The same one. I'm going in. Inside the building. Okay, my phone died earlier, so this part is from memory. I shouted for Mike and Pickle, but got nothing. Then a loud thud, followed by a muffled voice. Female, broken English. I didn't catch all of it, but it chilled me. I crept deeper, keeping low. The place is an abandoned lab or maybe a hospital. Rusted cages line the walls. Some held skeletons, mostly animals, though a few were harder to identify. Broken bottles and glass littered the ground. Labels faded but still faintly scientific. Plants forced their way through cracked tiles. Bugs swarmed over everything. I found a cage with a nest built inside. And then I heard Pickle's yelp, faint but close. I followed the sound into a room that reeked so strongly it made me vomit. Piles of bones, rotting corpses, animal heads. Some were intact torsos, ripped open like something had fed on the hearts. And one corpse was human. A girl. Long strands of brown hair clung to the decomposing skull. Most of the body was gone, but there was enough left to see what she was. My stomach turned. The missing girl. It had to be her. Then I heard it again, the voice. And Pickle's whine. I ducked behind a broken counter. That's when she walked in. An impossibly tall figure, hunched but still towering. At least 8 feet. She was holding Pickle by the neck like a toy. She saw me. She stared. I thought I was going to die, and she threw Pickle to the ground. He yelped, scrambled, and bolted toward me. I didn't think I just ran. Pickle ran with me. We sprinted until I crashed into someone. Mike, he grabbed me, saw the terror on my face, and without a word, we both ran. Ran until our lungs burned and our legs gave out. We collapsed on the grass, barely making it out of the forest. Pickle lay beside Mike, dirty, covered in spider webs, limping from an injured leg. When I caught my breath, I told Mike everything I saw, the corpse, the giant girl. He just stared at me like I'd lost my mind, but I know what I saw. The following days, we haven't gone back since. I haven't even stepped near the forest, but it's gnawing at me. I have to know if what I saw was real. Everyone I've told thinks I'm crazy, delusional, but I can't let it go. I'm going back today. Mike insists on coming, probably to prove I'm nuts. We're packing this time. Bear repellent, rope, first aid, water, ice packs, flashlights, even a few weapons. If the building is real, and if she is real, then this time, I'll have proof. We left before sunrise, backpacks heavy with gear, rope, flashlights, knives, first aid, even a rusty hammer Mike insisted on bringing. Without Pickle trotting along, the silence between us felt sharper. The hike, the forest swallowed us whole. 6 hours we walked, our boots crunching dirt and dead leaves, but no birds sang, no bugs buzzed. Not even the wind moved the branches. It was as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting. By the 5th hour, sweat glued my shirt to my back. Mike's breathing grew loud and ragged, his broad shoulders heaving under the straps of his pack. He didn't say a word, but the tight grip he kept on his flashlight told me everything. When the building came into view, my stomach sank. The first time I saw it, it looked like the forest was swallowing at vines over the doorway, plants covering the walls. But now, the doorway was bare. The vines had been ripped down, shredded, like someone or something had torn them away to make the entrance clear. Mike muttered, That's not how we left it. I didn't answer. My legs were shaking too hard. Inside the building, the air inside was damp, thick with mildew and something rotting. Every step echoed too loud on cracked tile floors. Rusted pipes hung from the ceiling like veins, and broken glass crunched under our boots. We passed empty cages, some with bent bars, others with locks that had been forced open. Old clipboards lay scattered, the papers yellow and water-stained. Words like subject and trial number 14 flashed in the beam of Mike's light. Neither of us spoke. Finally, we reached the room of bodies. The smell hit first. Sweet rot. My throat closed up. Bones littered the ground, animal skeletons mostly, but in the corner, the half-rotted remains of a human girl slumped against the wall. Mike's flashlight trembled as it lit her face, or what was left of it. His voice cracked. Melissa. It might be her. His eyes watered, his lips quivering, but he held the light steady. For the first time since I'd known him, Mike looked small. I lowered my head, unable to speak. That's when I felt it. A touch. Light fingers brushing my hair. Mike's scream shattered the silence. What the hell is that? I looked up. She was towering over me, bent forward to fit in the room. Skin stretched too tight over bone. Long, filthy hair tangled around her face. Fingers cracked and crooked, nails yellow and jagged. Her enormous eyes stared into mine, unblinking. She tugged at my hair like a child inspecting a toy. Her mouth opened, dry, broken words scraped out. Soft, her head tilted, eyes flicking between me and Mike. She reached toward him with her other hand, brushing his short hair with cracked nails. Mike froze, trembling, tears streaming silently down his face. The woman's lips moved again. People, not seen people. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it in years. I tried to back away, but she yanked my hair tighter. Pain shot across my scalp, forcing me still. Her stomach growled, loud, deep. She whispered hungry, always hungry. Her broken words. Mike raised his hands slowly, palms out. His voice shook. We were not here to hurt you. We're just looking. Her eyes widened. She repeated the word in a broken echo. Hurt. Hurt me. She shook her head violently, hair whipping. Not bad. Not monster. Just hungry. Drool ran from her cracked lips. She leaned down closer, her breath hot, rancid, making me gag. Eat, she whispered, tilting her head. Need to stay alive. Her mouth opened wider than it should, jagged teeth glistening in the light. She lowered toward me. The struggle. Mike snapped out of his freeze. He lunged forward, yanking her hand off my head and swinging the hammer hard into her temple. The blow echoed through the room. She stumbled back, screeching, clutching her skull. No, and no, she wailed, voice breaking into static-like cracks. I'm not bad, just need. But her need twisted. Her eyes rolled, her jaw snapped wide, and she lunged at Mike. He blasted her with bear spray, the mist covering her face. She shrieked, stumbling back, claws raking across the wall. Burns. Hurts, she cried, her words broken, guttural. Not fair, just hungry. Her voice cracked into sobs, twisted between pain and rage. I alone, so long alone. The escape. Oh, didn't wait. Mike grabbed my arm, shouting, run. We bolted down the hallway, flashlights shaking wildly, footsteps pounding. Behind us, her screeches echoed, her fists smashing into walls as she staggered after us. Come back, she cried, her words echoing down the corridor. Don't leave me. Please, need people. Her footsteps thundered closer. We burst through the entrance, crashing into branches and vines, running until my chest burned and my legs buckled. When we finally stopped, the building was swallowed by the forest behind us. The only sound was our gasping breaths. Mike collapsed to the ground, shaking his head. She wasn't even evil. Just his voice broke. She just wanted to live. The ID card. I spotted something in the dirt, half buried under leaves. I picked it up. An old ID badge. The photo was faded, but the face was hers, the same wide eyes, the same hair, before it became tangled and filthy. Name, 205-6834. Division, genetic trial, human adaptation project. My chest tightened. She wasn't born a monster. She was made one. A failed experiment, abandoned in a crumbling lab. Left to rot, left to starve. And now, she lived here, feeding on anything unlucky enough to wander in. Her voice echoed in my head, even as I stared at the card. Not my fault. Moonlight shone through the dense, desolate forest, obscured by the fog just above my head. Sloshing through the mud, I nearly tripped with each step. My legs were an uncontrollable blur as my body flew through the darkness. My face stinging and red, blood dripping down it from the whips that were the low-hanging branches. The path was a narrow crack splitting the vast swath of trees. By that point, I had forgotten what I was running from, or perhaps I never knew. And if something was chasing me, I'd not have been able to hear it. The only sound echoing through my ears was the inescapable pounding of my heart and the cold, cruel wind slapping my face. But that didn't stop my mad dash on the dark, twisting path. In my haste, I failed to notice the large log that ran perpendicular to the path. My shoe lodged itself in one of the log's rotted out holes, my leg snagging on the log momentarily, bones cracking as my foot slipped from my shoe. I was still in the air, but quickly slammed into the ground. Groaning and yelping, I tumbled down the path before hitting a tree, stopping me immediately. I lay motionless in the mud, groaning slightly before rolling onto my back and spitting out the bloody mud in my mouth. Normally, I'd be absolutely disgusted by something so vile, but I hadn't the time for disgust. I awkwardly drew myself up once more, adrenaline coursing through my veins like a potent elixir. My ankle had been badly hurt, but I was still able to hobble weakly down the path. I knew I needed to escape, but I had no idea when the path would end. It could be miles before it connected to civilization. I wanted to yell for help, but something stopped me, something almost instinctual. I still wasn't sure what was happening or where I was, but somehow I knew to stay quiet. I hadn't gone back for my shoe, as it was 100 feet back, and I wasn't too keen on backtracking. Mud squelched between my toes with each sad limp I took. My ribs sent radiating pains through me with each breath. I sounded horrible, like some wheezing old man. With such a slow pace, the low-hanging limbs no longer whipped my face. I merely batted them out of my way weakly. Fog began thickening. Before it had obscured the trees above, but now I could only see a few feet ahead. Trees then began clacking together in the increasingly violent wind. The low-hanging branches seemed to close in on me. I thought it was an illusion or the wind at first, but I soon realized it wasn't. The thin, sickly branches began grasping at my throat and head. I tore them from my head and throat, but they soon latched onto my arms. I felt so weak in that moment, as branches cruelly encompassed my body like some wretched constrictor. I struggled, but couldn't break free. It seemed certain they'd overtake me. With all my might, I threw my arm forward, branches snapping with the motion. I used my freed arm to begin ripping other branches from my body. I wasn't sure how I was doing this, as the branches were thick enough to prohibit such an act, but they tore away with incredible ease. Their bar-like strength turning to that of thread seemed impossible, but my questioning soon grew dormant as fear and panic sent me quickly hobbling away. I was so exhausted, so frightened and unsure. I couldn't run anymore. I collapsed to the ground, mud splashing me. I panted, trying to catch my breath, but I couldn't. With each gulp of air, I winced in pain. It was so cold, so terribly cold and cruel. Without warning, warmth began creeping in. The fluidness of the mud then changed to a hard surface. I hunched up from my fetal position, and a new landscape filled me with dread. I crouched in the middle of a large concrete slab with what looked to be desert all around. The slab had strange symbols painted on it, each one distinct and robust. Chunks of it were missing, and it had many long cracks. My blood ran ice cold, despite the drastic change in temperature. It was hot and dry, with air like a statue. At that point, I had no idea what to do. Instinct no longer told me to run, and my mind hadn't the faintest clue either. If my landscape could change at any moment, what point was there in fleeing? The thought rang through my head for what seemed hours. I screamed, hoping someone would hear, but nothing came out. I knew I had screamed. I was sure I had, but I heard nothing. With no other options, I began walking out into the desert. The sand felt hot on my bare foot, clinging to the mud, encasing it. I began to climb a tall sand dune. I crawled on all fours up the steep dune, almost collapsing. By the time I reached its top, I did just that. I collapsed, letting the sand warm my battered body. I wanted to fall asleep, but a shuffling nearby quickly dismissed that. I rose to my feet as quickly as my crippled body would permit. My head turned to the left to see a figure dressed in black approaching me. It wore a robe, with a hood concealing its face. It was just mere feet away when it lifted that hood. It was a man. He had a perfect face with no wrinkles or inconsistencies. His eyes were blank white, containing no pupils, and he was completely bald. A single tattoo branded his forehead, looking eerily similar to those on the concrete slab. I was struck by fear by his abnormal appearance. I wanted to ask who he was, but he soon lunged at me. I pulled backwards, only managing to fall on my back and injure my ankle again. He leaped on me, clawing at my eyes and trying to strangle me. I kicked him off of me, causing him to fall to my side. Without skipping a beat, he quickly unsheathed a dagger and lunged at me. He slashed at me, the blade slicing through my arm. I screamed in agony, this time hearing it, and then rolled away from him. He quickly caught me, slashing at my chest multiple times. Pain shot through my whole body as I flailed about screaming. He jumped on top of me and began to plunge the blade down towards my head. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. I stopped fighting as fear had frozen me still. It was so incredibly slow watching the blade plunge downwards, each second seeming like just a frame. The blade reflected the moonlight, glimmering as it descended. He made no noise or expression in that moment. He hadn't groaned or contorted his face before, and he didn't now. Just before the blade was going to plunge into my head, my eyes burst into a new reflection. A ceiling, walls, a bed. I noticed these things, screaming, leaping out of the unknown bed. My frantic, near-death mind soon shifted, and I recognized it as my own room. Cuts burning like 1,000 lashes didn't permit my mind a much due ease. I had one shoe on and one incredibly dirty foot with a broken ankle. Muddy sand coated my body like a thick coat. Getting out of bed, I grabbed my keys and raced toward the front door, my ankle not permitting swiftness. In my haste, I didn't bother closing the front door as I fled to my car. I needed to get to a hospital before my wounds bled too much. I jumped into the car, groaning in agony as I did, before pulling out of my driveway recklessly. The hospital was only 15 minutes away, but there were several times I thought I'd black out. Once I got there, I didn't even bother parking. I just rolled up near the entrance, got out, and began limping inside. Before I entered the door, some medical personnel grabbed me, helping me inside. Blood soaked my chest and arms, eliciting shrieks from people in the waiting room. The staff immediately put me on a stretcher and rolled me to a room just before I blacked out. When I woke up, a nurse began to inform me of my state and asked me what happened. The police were also there, as they needed to make a report. They asked what happened, and I told them someone attacked me. I knew I couldn't tell them it was in my dreams, so I said that all I remembered was someone attacking me. I lied, telling them I forgot where I was. I don't know if they believed me, but the nurse said it could be trauma-induced amnesia. After the nurse and police left me alone, I looked down on my right wrist in absolute horror. There was a tattoo on it. A tattoo just like the man from my dream had. It was a circle with short lines jutting out at irregular intervals from its perimeter. In the center were 3 smaller circles clustered perfectly together. I almost shrieked, but instead I fainted. I never mentioned the tattoo to the staff or police. I knew they'd put me in the psych section and claim I had a psychotic break. But I knew I hadn't gotten that tattoo, and I knew the wounds hadn't been inflicted anywhere other than that dream. That was 3 days ago. I've been released and sent home. I have a cast for my ankle, crutches, and many bandages covering my chest and arms. My face and neck also have some bandages covering the scrapes and cuts. I have barely gotten any sleep since this event, and any sleep I have gotten has been from short naps during the day. I won't sleep at night. though I'm not sure it can't just reach me during the day. I've begun doubting myself, but I know I woke up with these wounds, and I have the hospital records to prove the wounds are real. Not that I need records to prove their realness at this point. They're very much real, very painful, and they won't heal quickly. From the tattoo branding my wrist, I know it will return. Or maybe that it is a part of me, maybe I'm a part of it. Some vessel for an unknown, cruel force.